it looks glamorous to be a paramedic and to fly lights and sirens to a call.
I loved every second of it. It's not that we wanted people to be injured or sick, but we wanted to be the ones that were there to take care of them as much as we could.
These professions are so insanely important and valuable, but these people are human and their jobs are really, really real.
One of the first things that I had to do was to realize I have PTSD.
A lot of paramedics are sick because of it. They've taken their own lives. Their families are broken and gone. This is a societal problem that is hugely expensive.
Every individual person has a story of their life. Nobody's as special, but they all have a story. And making judgments on people without knowing their story or their circumstance only degrades them even more. I was overwhelmed when I arrived here. Early on in my career, I'd always envisioned myself coming down here and working and gaining experience, learning from it, growing from it, and taking that back to the Kootenays and into a full-time spot there.
Was it worse before a year and a half ago, or did it get worse in the last year and a half?
Last year and a half. When I first started down here, we were doing, I mean, you might do one overdose a month.
Really? It's amazing how fast things can change, eh?
Yeah.
Was it you? Was it you telling me that the dealers will,
Before I put another man down / possible OD at the corner of PC6 at 4 Avenue. You're looking for a 45-year-old passed out.
Turn left. I didn't come down here guns blazing thinking I was going to save the world. I'm not that naive.
You know this alley well.
I've done a lot of research in this alley.
Yeah.
He started breathing again.
His name's Felix?
Yeah.
Hey, Felix. My name's Clive. I'm one of the paramedics. I've got some relatable life experiences to people that live in the downtown east side, and that's one of the reasons why I chose to work here. Everybody has trauma down here. Part of the reason why they've ended up down here. So a couple day run on meth and down? Any meth today?
I do side with my own meth.
So you just do a goofball? Yeah? All right. How much do you smash? Of each, generally?
Right now, I'm at half paper down, quarter of a pint down, and very little. I just go to jail and jail 2 months, right? So,
How many times have you overdosed since you've been out?
a few, actually.
Were you using when you were in? No? Okay. You had methadone or Suboxone when you were in there?
The last time I was in and out a few times.
All right, man. Well, we had 2 shots in Naloxone this morning. Right, you're up and going now. Was there speed in that last shot?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to go to the hospital?
No, frankly, because I know I was gonna sit there and dude, I know because I honestly God, I had sickness last year. I overdosed 15 times, man. I've dropped so many times. I'm gonna sit there and have all the nurses and stuff like that's the junkie. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Everybody else will be like, that's a junkie. Like, man, you know what?
Hey, man. Don't judge.
If you seem legitimately you're concerned, like, you know, and frankly, it's cool, man. Like, I appreciate it.
Well, I'm legitimately concerned because I know exactly what you're going through right now. Because I've done it myself. So I'm also aware of everything about that, right? So that's why I'm more concerned.
for me.
Because I know how much you're minimizing it right now.
Dude, I'm so happy. I'm going to treatment. I'm trying to get a treatment.
All right.
It's like,
Do you want to go up to the hospital and get on some Suboxone or methadone?
I'm on methadone right now.
You're on methadone right now? Did you take a dose today?
No,
Okay.
that's probably what help out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna-
Yeah. It'll reduce the risk of this reoccurring. All right, man? Go get your dose. It'll help you stop this. Okay.
Why did he not want to go anywhere?
They usually don't anymore. People have the right to make poor medical decisions. It's their fundamental right.
How is that for you?
It is, yeah. I probably get more nostalgia walking up the alley than anything. You know, if anything brings it back, I've gotten needles from here. Hey, how's it going? Good for the next one. I was raised in a family that, you know, community service was an important aspect of how a community works, and I enjoyed it. I would say that I responded to a call that fundamentally changed me as a person. Somebody who was incredibly close to me, probably closer to me than my own brother at the time. I was involved in a all-terrain vehicle accident. I was the third person on scene, and I had to declare him dead. And I never recovered from it.
Post-traumatic stress disorder has been around for a long time. It's been called many other things. In the First World War, it was shell shock. Second World War, it's battle fatigue. In Vietnam, it was post-traumatic stress.
In the Canadian population, the rate ranges roughly, we think, 7 to 10%. In paramedics, it could be as high as 1 in 4 paramedics. The trouble is people may not be reporting, so it could actually be much higher than that.
I was a paramedic for 32 years. I heard about a new service that was going to be starting in 1974. It was called the BC Ambulance Service.
Paramedicine is actually a relatively new profession. Fire brigades have been around since the 1600s. Police have been around since the 1800s, and paramedicine began in the 1970s.
Shows like Emergency really twigged people's thinking.
400 clear.
And I'm sure it encouraged a lot of people who thought, I would love to do that. I looked into it, thought it was going to be a good deal.
Can you send me some EKG?
It was to try and relieve the pressure placed on emergency hospitals, get more care to the patients sooner.
My mom got sick when I was 21 years old, and that caused her to have very severe seizures. My youngest brother, who was 5 at the time, he would hide behind the couch when my mom would have a seizure because it's very scary. We saw paramedics all the time, and the compassion was just flowing out of them. It was a female paramedic who found my brother one time behind the couch, and she came in and she was my Wonder Woman. I could imagine myself in the uniform. I could see myself as her. Every single part of my being turned into becoming a paramedic. I think I was 21 when I started the process. I had my daughter at that time, and she was just 2 years old. There was no exception. I needed to excel. I needed to provide for her.
I think they need to know going through school, it's a great job, but what they're really signing up for. They just want to help people, and I don't think they know going into it how much it can affect them.
One April the 5th, 1996, I was stationed in Vernon. Quiet, rainy morning. We thought probably going to be a quiet day.
911, what's your emergency?
We got the call. We heard the police, immediately knew something was wrong. Many sirens. We got to the call and we were told that the police didn't know where the shooter was. That was my first indication that guns were involved. But hurry up and get in there because there was people everywhere. There was a policeman inside, guns out, going from room to room. My partner immediately goes to a patient he has to work on. And I understood what was going on all of a sudden. A family was about to celebrate a wedding, and an estranged husband showed up with at least 2 firearms and murdered 8 people. Children, grandparents, and everyone in between. And I had to go and assess what we were dealing with. So I had to go and check whether this crumpled person on the floor was alive or dead. And I had to go room to room. And then there was children, so I'd been at other scenes years before where children hid from someone trying to harm them. And they hide behind water tanks, behind toilets. They hide under stairs where adults can't get into. So I started going and looking to see if there's any more children. And the police said, again, we don't know where the shooter is. Be careful where you're going. But I went anyhow. We determined how many patients we had and called in more resources and started transporting patients. All my energy just drained out into the pavement. I was confused. I was not understanding anymore. I remember saying very clearly to the supervisor, call in a psychologist, because there was 6 paramedics that were getting ready to go back for the second time to the scene in 3 different ambulances, already exposed to this. It took 3 hours for a clinical psychologist to show up because he was busy. By then we were too sick. We didn't want help, a lot of us. that first very important step didn't happen. We call it the God syndrome. You think you can save everybody. So when you can't, that's hard. Today, I volunteer as a first responder auxiliary member.
101, this is dispatch. Good copy.
North Shuswap first responders, go ahead, BC Ambulance. If BC Ambulance Service receives a 911 call for the North Shuswap, I call that information out to our first responders and get them to respond to the call. 10-4, 4-9, and 6-5 will respond. The ambulance is coming from Chase. It's quite satisfying. Dispatch clear. It gives me a little energy buzz, quite honestly. But I feel quite protected in that I'm able to deal with it. I stay away from patient care.
Paramedics have higher rates of PTSD than both police officers and firefighters. They often go the same calls as police and fire, but paramedics typically have longer and more intense exposure with patients.
I have seen life leave. I have seen life come back. I have seen life born. I've seen all aspects of living. Why is one worse than the other? Because I'm a human. Because I want to help.
Someone with PTSD is frequently experiencing feelings of being threatened, feelings of being fearful, increased anger, increased irritability, and there's literally biological changes that are going on in the brain.
The triggers can come from anywhere. When I see mauve carpeting, my brain takes me back to the murders. Whenever I came upon a patient, a person, how they were positioned on the carpet. And it was that color everywhere in the house. I have to leave a place sometimes because of something like that. I just have to leave.
They have not properly processed the event. So, although doing their absolute best to avoid any reminder of this event, they may experience intrusive memories, flashbacks, nightmares are quite common, literally seeing or actually feeling as if they are experiencing the event is all part of that.
Very early on, after the initial event, my life was already starting to collapse. I still wasn't dealing with stuff, and I wasn't making meaningful connections with anybody.
One of the other factors that can happen with PTSD is engaging in higher risk behaviors. We certainly do know that alcohol use increases as a coping method, as a way to self-medicate, to avoid symptoms they may be experiencing, to numb them.
I became very good at putting a front on and showing everybody that I was really good, that I was doing fine. Couldn't manage a bank account, couldn't manage basic things like getting food, budgeting properly for that. I became more interested in getting home and getting drunk or high.
The call first came in as 5 possible, what we call VSA or vital signs absent patients. And we were right around the corner. Police were en route. We had no idea what to anticipate. We knew it was a serious call. And I remember walking in behind a police officer and feeling, this is bad. It was very gruesome. 2 women were brutally murdered. looking into my patient's eyes and seeing nothing. That's what haunts me. Listening to his words, a human being describing what he had done. And even though some things he was saying weren't making sense, most of it was clear enough to recognize that this was the murderer. And I was starting an IV while he was being charged with 2 counts of homicide. It caused what's called a moral injury. It affected my view of human morals. This wasn't an accident. This was something well thought out and orchestrated, and I didn't want to believe that really existed in my world. You know, you would think that there were things that would have topped this. I'd seen physically more gruesome scenes before. I had been to car accidents with more blood, with children. But it's the moral injury that really changed my view of the world.
One thing about first responders is they have a very high sense of morals and ethics, a very high sense of what is right and what is wrong. And when you attend to a critical incident that just doesn't make any sense morally, it's those types of calls that we struggle with because we don't understand, I guess, the grand plan.
A common coping style for paramedics is dissociation, which means doing whatever you can to avoid thinking about or talking about the call. Why this is so important is because if someone dissociates from a trauma afterwards, they can't properly process the call. So it's a major factor in developing PTSD.
2 years went by, we had to go to trial, so I had to see him again. I went in there and I had what I needed to say, and I was prepared to go in, do that, and leave without looking at him. And when I took the stand, he was sitting behind bulletproof glass off to my right-hand side. And when I sat down, it obstructed my view from him, which was perfect for me. But the lawyer said, "Can you please stand up and kind of move to your left?" And instinctively, if you want to see if someone can see you, you look at them. So I looked at him to make sure I had moved enough, and that's when my disassociation started. And it's like I'm in a movie and I'm not there anymore. Like, things are very slow motion. The part of my brain that's recognizing that I'm in something that's traumatizing, my mind would remove itself and it doesn't hurt as much. So that was a very difficult day. And that same day, I had to go to a memorial for a friend who I had been hired with, who had died by suicide right after the trial. I came home and sunk into the lowest layer of depression that I know, pain that I just couldn't even sleep through because my nightmares and night terrors were so bad at that time.
You don't forget it, you just store it. I was self-medicating, I was drinking too much, I was working excessive. I was trying to hide from it. I thought I could manage things, and I started getting angry, eventually becoming potentially very violent. And pretty soon it all falls up. The bucket overflows, and you're no longer in control of your emotions. you're very dangerous to others, to yourself.
I was not capable of dealing with what had happened. The suicidal thoughts and ideations slowly crept up stronger. And as they progressed, I'd use more drugs. I'd use more alcohol. You know, I remember the day I walked onto the bridge deck of the Lionsgate Bridge. I stood there. I don't know if I was doing it to scare myself or not. I would describe it as a fog. I would describe it as I would binge on drugs and alcohol, and that's where I'd end up. And it wasn't long after that that I became an intravenous user. Really, I was trying to escape. And there were days where I would show up where I was not legally, where I would be legally impaired. Lots of days.
I didn't know about suicides, you know? I didn't know about murders. I didn't know about trauma. I didn't know those effects. I always thought it belonged to the patients. Huh? As caregivers, we suck up a lot of that fear for the patient, and we take it away. We don't know what to do with it.
My family was noticing. I was hiding alcohol. I was just sitting in my basement in the dark a lot of times and drinking constantly, to the point where I was drinking before shifts. And I always said to myself I would never get to that. That wouldn't be what I would do. And then I all of a sudden was doing that.
Colleagues were starting to clue in that there was more going on than a little bit of depression. For all intents and purposes, I'm living in a car. My drug use got really bad. I came to work one morning for a shift, and I was in psychosis. I lost my temper a couple times. I thought someone was following me. My partner just said he's not going to work with me. And the relationship that we had built meant enough to me that I started coming clean with what was happening. And I told him about my methamphetamine use, to the extent of my methamphetamine use. And I asked him for help. That day, for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. I wasn't aware of what was going to happen so much, but I didn't care. I wanted to live.
Receiving informal social support from one's own partner shortly after a call could be one of the best ways to prevent PTSD in paramedics. But it historically has not been okay to express emotion after a call. So certainly there have been a lot of people that have had PTSD, but we don't even know about them.
The stigma is still very prevalent. Things have changed. More people are coming forward, but it's still a very suck it up, buttercup sort of attitude out there. A lot of people still feel that if they do come forward, they're at risk of losing friends, losing their jobs, and that is still happening.
That's where a lot of people lose their life, is in that land of limbo, where you're not being treated, and you can't get help.
I was being notified of first responder suicides, and I thought, nobody's really tracking this, and how do we know if we have a crisis within emergency services? We started tracking the suicides. The national average for suicide is about 10 people per 100,000 people. But when we look at the rate of suicide within the paramedic community, for example, in 2016, it was at 56 per 100,000.
The trouble is family members may perceive suicide in different ways. They may not report it. So it's likely that the numbers that they do have are lower than what's actually occurring. But most paramedics that you talk to know of at least one other paramedic that's committed suicide.
There is a crisis within the paramedic community when it comes to suicide.
I've lost many friends because of addiction and because of PTSD. I was in 100% denial that I had a problem.
So there was nothing really to signal that something catastrophic is about to happen.
I was home alone one day, completely sober, and for whatever reason, my brain convinced me 100% that the only answer to my pain was to die.
I was at work and the texts started. She was not making a lot of sense.
I was texting gibberish to her.
They got increasingly more incoherent.
She showed me even after, because I didn't believe I'd even texted her.
Words became jumbled letters, became nothingness.
I wrote a suicide note. I had a plan.
And then she sent a text that said, "Please take care of Caroline." And I thought, okay, she's never gone there before.
I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't feel. I felt all of a sudden like there was a piece from this pain, this horrible pain.
I called her, but she was fading.
Drugs were affecting me, the alcohol was affecting me.
She was able to speak, sort of.
And she had the sense to know that something was very, very wrong.
I knew that she had taken pills, but at least I knew that she was breathing, I knew she was alive, and that for me was like, if I can just keep her on the phone, then I know she's still alive. I got the medics to go, and I got the police to go, and she was found unconscious on the bathroom floor.
She saved my life. If I was left and not assisted or taken to the hospital, I surely would have died.
And she would come to and she would say things, you know, she was mumbling, and I can't believe he just twisted her neck, he just twisted her neck. And it was like, when it dawned on me exactly what she was talking about, I thought, oh my gosh, like she's literally talking about exactly what she saw when she walked into that hotel room. This isn't just somebody having a bad day, like there's way more going on. And I just thought how profoundly sad that that's what's swirling around in her head.
I started going to an outpatient program at a hospital. I call it Save My Life School. I used to call Children's Aid as a paramedic. Never in my life did I think that I would be on the other side, but because my son was 8 years old when he saw me get taken away by the ambulance, the Children's Aid Society were made to open up a file on me and investigate and make sure that I was a fit mother. And I was so mad at first. I was yelling into the phone saying, "I'm a professional. I am a good mother. I'm a paramedic. You have the wrong person." My mom's like this, like, rock star mom that does everything, and now she can't have Adam. I was like, what is she doing? So I don't know, it was weird. And I finally got off the phone and I went to one of my teachers, and the teacher said, well, is what the worker's saying true? Are the details she provided you true? And I had to stop and say yes. What she had said was true. And my son, at that moment, was in jeopardy. And I was that mom. And for many months to come, I was only allowed supervised visits with my son. It was one of the most difficult things in my life. And I definitely never thought that that would be me.
Obviously, when you don't have like a lot of education on it, you think the person's being selfish. And like, I just resented her for it. I was like, really? And now I realized it wasn't her fault. She wasn't choosing to do that. That was her brain. This is not, I hate when people say it's the easy way out or that it's selfish. These people don't choose these things.
We need to change the conversation in society and actually look at the stigma and our own personal beliefs and biases and how we understand mental illness, because paramedics aren't just living in their workplace, they're also living in the Canadian society. And that places an impact on if you're comfortable seeking help, if you're able to talk about this.
When a paramedic feels they have reached their limit and they need help, they have to file a claim through WorkSafe. So they would go and find the first thing they could that would disallow the claim. And that would be, oh, well, you know, you just went through a divorce, so it isn't your job, it's the divorce. But the divorce was as a result of the PTSD. So you have no income. Once you use up all your sick days, you're house.
What's happened since I last saw you?
I relapsed. And went back to treatment.
Why did you relapse?
Because I'm an addict. You know, I stopped doing what I needed to do to stay sober. I stopped, you know, I wouldn't go to peer support groups because especially when there was veterans there, because I didn't feel that I was worthy to sit there with them. I didn't feel that my trauma was justifiably good enough to be there. And that's maybe one of the reasons why I haven't dived into it. Addiction is a disease that is so paradoxical that it's terrifying. Meaning that once I've stopped and I'm stone cold sober, I will try to convince myself that I can manageably use again. Like right now, you know, I have anxiety speaking about it. I'm breathing shallower. I can feel that my pulse is racing. It's not that I'm triggered, it's that I'm nervous to talk about it because I know how close I am, I think. Right now, I'm literally one bad day away from being back into active addiction.
Dispatch, this is 01.
Go ahead, 01, this is dispatch.
I just had BCAS whistle through town. There we're headed east through Scotts Creek.
How does it feel, Don, when you hear an ambulance like that?
I want to go. You're right. I want to be there and help. And if we're needed, they're going to call us.
Does the sound of the siren have any kind of trigger for you?
Oh yeah, my blood pressure goes up, my pulse goes up, and my awareness, my height is heightened. I hear it, and I immediately am on the lookout. And I want to know what's going on. But yeah, I get excited. I'll never lose that drive, I'm sure. Especially when it's going to be coming for me one day.
It's taken me a lot of therapy and treatment, but I don't live with suicidal ideation anymore. I don't have night terrors anymore. I still struggle with depression and anxiety, but I have a lot of tools in my tool belt now that I can use to help me through that.
I hate that she had to see horrible things. But from a practical standpoint, I'm grateful that she was a paramedic because she was outstanding. So people want her on scene, but then people don't realize what it does to her.
What is it, bughead or banshee?
Even though I can't be a paramedic on the road anymore because it's not healthy for me, I still have dreams about being a paramedic. I miss my peers. I miss being in the back of the ambulance. I miss seeing my patients. I miss that feeling of gratification that I would get from a call well done. It breaks my heart that I can't put my uniform on anymore.
You can often go through a lot of days where it seems like I don't make a difference. But every once in a while, there's a one call that changes your perspective on the whole thing, and you're back, and you feel worthwhile again. Is the lack of things that are being done to help people that are in situations like mine. It means there's a shelf life on people in this job, and a lot of us are past that shelf life. I'm trying to deal with looking at what's next. I have hope. I have hope. It's not that I don't have hope and I don't see hope. It's that I just wish there was more of it.